Oh my lord, a snapping turlaw. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Fishing Loons podcast, brought to you by the Average Ontario Anglers. We have for you today a very special bonus episode, right, Andrew? This is a bonus because it's the third episode of the month, which we never do, right, Andrew?
Never. Not since, over a year ago.
Yeah, exactly. So usually we have our episodes on the first and the third Sunday of every month, but we thought because it's CanCast this weekend, we would be nice. We're generous people. We thought we'd come up with another episode so people can listen to it on the way up to CanCast, on the way up to setup. We're releasing it a day earlier. So if you're listening to this on Saturday, you're welcome. But you can also listen to it on the way to CanCast or on the way home from CanCast, or just listen to it whenever you want, because there's no rules, right, Andrew?
There's no rules, but that made me think of, you said people setting up on Saturday. I think it would be hilarious to have like one guy who has no idea who we are to be standing in the middle of an arena and hearing our podcast being played at 4 different times, like by different people listening to it, setting up their booth, but none of it's lined up properly because they all just started their own playlist. Like some guy's going insane. We finally say hi. They're like, I hate you.
These guys are morons. So anyway, if this is your first time joining us, this is a weird episode as your first one, but yay. I'm Jesse. I'm the host of this show. And with me is my co-host, Andrew, who has a giant beard, if you can't see that, if you're listening to this.
But if you're listening to this weekend, you'll see it tomorrow or today.
Yeah. We're going to talk a little bit about CanCast, just a little bit, because if you're listening to this, it's probably over and you're probably exhausted, but we're going to get into that. But this episode is pretty cool. We're going to talk about weird things. And I know we usually do talk about weird things, like every episode, but today we're actually going to talk about a lot of different weird things. We're going to talk about weird wildlife encounters. We're going to talk about the weirdest things that we've caught. We're going to talk about weird things that we found while we're fishing. We got some really weird ones, like really weird. Weird people that we've seen at the boat launch or in the water when we're fishing. Got some good stories for that. And also fish doing weird things. We've seen some fish as an angler. We do see fish from time to time, but we've seen some fish do some weird things. So we're going to talk about that. And then we also have some listener inputted stories as well. People telling us some weird things. And I was looking through them. Some of them are X-rated. So we're going to have to kind of go through and put the clean ones in. So yeah, we're going to get into that just to whet your appetite a bit. But before we get into that, because we didn't do it last week, as tradition states, we now have the interesting fishing fact. And to handle that, we have our amazing bearded co-host, Andrew.
Well, thank you for that introduction. But the beard is good. I'm not very amazing. I'm average.
It's true.
So this time I wanted to talk about crayfish because they've come up a couple times in different interesting fishing facts, being a way to judge the environmental impact or how a lake is doing and stuff like that health-wise. But crayfish have a fair bit of cool features to them. I'm sure everyone listening, they know what a crayfish is. It looks like a lobster, but small. They are invertebrates. Not invertebrates. What is it? Are they invertebrates?
Crustaceans.
Possibly. Crustaceans, there's the word. They are the freshwater cousins of lobsters and crab. They're the same order of Decapoda, or whatever you say that in Latin. And they have a similar look and life cycle to those other animals. So here's a few cool facts about them. They have independent eyes, which means that each eye can move in a separate direction, kind of like chameleons do. So they can help them spot predators that may be hunting them, or also spot some food that they want to eat. They also have regeneration, kind of like Wolverine or Deadpool kind of thing, where if they lose a claw or a leg, they can regrow it as they molt. They'll shed their hard shell, and every time they shed it, it's grown back a little bit more. So that's why sometimes you'll see this really big crayfish, but with these really gimpy claws, or one's way smaller than the other sometimes.
Yep.
So, but that's something where they can pop the claw, they can release their claw if, let's say, a bass grabs it, and then they can still get away. So it's good fight or flight. They can do flight pretty well, even though they're underwater. They also have, it's called backwards blitz. I'm sure you've seen this, and almost sometimes makes a snapping noise when you hear them underwater and it's quiet out. So when they're startled, they'll dart backwards with impressive speed because if you've ever eaten lobster, that tail meat is delicious. So these things have just pure muscle in their tail. They can have large families. So when the females can sometimes carry hundreds of eggs at once, and then they will reproduce and they'll hatch and stuff, but it can be hundreds of young that they can start to produce when they have their breeding season. So here's some of the things about crayfish. A lot of people know about them because they're delicious. Just like lobsters and crabs, you can eat them, and they're eaten all over the world. Down in the southern states, they're also called crawfish, crawdads, and again, same, different species, but exact same family of creatures. So when I used to tell people that I used to eat crayfish up in Beaverton, they were like, wow, that's weird. I'm like, you ever had crawfish gumbo? Like, that's the same thing. So you'll see a lot of people prepare them different ways. But besides being food, they're very important ecological indicators. They can be used to find out about water quality, about pollution, the ecosystem health, because if they're there, or very importantly, if they're not there, it tells us a lot about the health of a waterway. But here's some other cool things about specific species of crayfish. So what do you think the largest crayfish is? Or how large do you think the largest crayfish is? Asking for a species name is unfair.
I'm gonna say bigger than I think, like 10 inches big.
The largest crayfish is about 80 centimeters long. I apologize, I don't have the imperial conversion on that, but Jesse can look that up while I mention the next fact. This one is the Tasmanian giant freshwater crayfish. Now, unfortunately, it's not here in Ontario. I should say fortunately, because it's not native to the area. But at 80 centimeters long, or
31.4 inches.
That's huge.
That's giant.
That is.
That's bigger than Andrew's PB walleye.
That's true. They can weigh, actually, that's way bigger than my PB walleye. Jesse was being generous to me. But they can weigh as much to 5 to 6 kilograms. Now, here in Ontario, one of the largest ones that we have is actually an invasive species called the rusty crayfish. And they can get to be about 30 centimeters long, their highest found size. And they can be big. And we've seen some that were about 15 plus. Jesse and I have. And that's a shocking size when you're used to just, a 3 or 4 inch crayfish. And now you see something that's well over half a foot long.
The size of a legit lobster? You're like,
it's a meaty crayfish.
Like when you grab a crayfish, usually I'm not too afraid. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll grab for it. But when Andrew lifted up this rock and he's like, look under here. And there's this crayfish the size of like half size of a lobster. I'm like, I'm not even going to try to grab that because that thing will pinch my finger right off. Oh man.
And some of the larger ones, I used to catch them just with a thick leather work glove, right? Because I didn't have to worry about grabbing it a certain way. I had some, and they weren't like the rusty crayfish. They were just like big blue claw crayfish. And I had a couple. I still have a scar on my index finger where the pincers actually cut through the leather glove, and I still have the scar on my finger. And that was from just, a 4-inch big crayfish. Like those things are, as what was the SpongeBob episode? Like big meaty claws. But an interesting thing, despite being able to grow to a fair size, a lot of crayfish will only live about 3 to 6 years. Some of the smaller species, again, 1 to 3 years even, they have a fairly short life cycle. The giant freshwater crayfish, now that doesn't grow to that size in that short amount of time, it can live 25 to 40 years in the wild, which that's getting closer to lobsters to say can never die, really, if they have optimum conditions. So that's pretty impressive. Those giant ones, being able to live 40 plus years in the wild makes them one of the longest living freshwater invertebrates on Earth. The last thing I'm going to mention about them is when they scurry away. I don't know if you've ever seen a crayfish like walking around and you're like, oh, I'm going to get that. It's just like hiding under a rock and you go to reach for it and in a blink of an eye, it's gone, right? How many times have we tried that trying to get some bait?
Almost every time. They're fast.
I was looking up how fast they can move because, again, that purpose is to escape from predators, not just, me trying to get them on a dinner plate. But think of all the other things trying to eat them: bass, herons, raccoons. So crayfish. Crayfish can move up to about 25 centimeters per second when they start flicking their tail. And it doesn't seem like much until you realize that how hard it is for yourself to move in water. even trying to have like an open hand, trying to reach for it and grab it. So these things are quite quick, which is why it's impressive thinking that these other animals oftentimes still catch them like bass and things like that, which is pretty impressive. And that's why you feel that tap, tap, because they're trying to catch what they think is going to shoot away from them when they're fishing jigs and whatnot for them. But those are just some of the little things about crayfish. The other cool thing is it's like mini lobsters that we have here in Ontario. It's not something that, many people often think of as having cool crustaceans, but we have some pretty neat ones. And again, they're healthy for the environment.
No, it's always good to learn things about things that the fish that we're trying to catch eat, right? So like crayfish are a huge part of a lot of game fish's diet, especially bass, but other fish too, like catfish, carp, walleye even. I'm sure any fish swimming around, if a crayfish presents itself, they're going to try to eat it. Now, some fish are better at, actually catching them than others. Like a smallmouth bass is probably 10 times better than, catching a crayfish than like a northern pike.
I have caught northern pike while fishing using live crayfish too.
You know what they say? Pike will hit anything. Yeah, that's cool. Now, again, we mentioned that we're releasing this episode slightly before CanCast, which again, we talk about that. Canada's biggest fishing show, also paired up now with Muskie Odyssey. So whether you're going to Muskie Odyssey or CanCast, obviously you're going to go to both shows because they're combined. But I do have some tips for people. If you're listening to this and you're on your way up to the show, I have some tips for you very quickly, and then we're going to not talk about CanCast for another year. Here's how you can survive a fishing show. Now, this doesn't just apply to CanCast, but CanCast is one of the last fishing shows of the year. So hopefully you learned your lesson last year when we gave you these tips and you got through the other fishing shows getting up to this point. But you have to do these things. So tip number one is you have to prepare mentally for a fishing show. Now, again, we're not going to a fishing show for like an hour and walking through. Like, we're there for a long time, but you have to prepare yourself mentally. And here's how you have to do it. You may think, what? We're not going into battle or anything. Like, no, we're technically not. But you have to accept the fact that your wallet will feel slightly lighter even if you stick to a budget. Like, how many times have you literally been like, you know what? I have $400 or I have, $100, whatever amount. I'm not going to spend any more money. And how many times do you literally, oh, well, I didn't know they were selling this, like how many times have you spent more money?
Well, I did stick my budget on these things, but this other purchase doesn't count towards that because I was able to use my debit card.
Yeah. I remember last year at Muskie Odyssey, they had a bank machine out in the lobby and it ran out of money twice or something like that. Yeah. Like the guys were going out to the bank machine being like, oh, I didn't know they had these. And there's no money left. I was like, that's crazy. So just prepare mentally for that. One good tip is just bring cash and just cash. Don't bring any like credit cards or anything and just bring cash. You'll be fine. You can't spend more than that. And just promise your friends, be like, listen, no matter how much I beg and plead, do not lend me any money. Don't do it.
See, I was going to suggest what you can do is you hold your friend's wallet. And I realized that's a terrible decision because now it's going to be who can spend more of the other person's money.
Well, technically that's theft. You don't want to get arrested, Andrew. Not again. Just kidding.
Well, we'll try to avoid it this year.
Yeah. So the next tip is you have to dress for battle, right, Andrew? You got to really think about what you're going to wear. You need to wear comfy shoes.
A tactical flashlight. Oh, so never mind.
Yeah. Tactical flashlight just in case. But you have to wear comfy shoes. A lot of these shows are like it's concrete floor or it's on an ice pad. And if you're there all day, like I feel bad for the vendors because the vendors are legit standing there all day. But if you're walking around, you're putting in tons of steps. The next thing you need, and this is one thing that Andrew does well, is you need to bring a backpack. Backpacks are great because how many times you go to a show and people are just like handing stuff out. They're like, hey, you want a Frisbee or like this catalog or a bunch of giveaway lure stuff? And they're just handing you stuff and you're just like, I have nowhere to put this. Bring a backpack if you're allowed. Andrew like has this big backpack. We just load it. Like it's full.
And this year with 2 shows happening simultaneously and being twice the size, I'm probably going to have multiple trips to the car to like empty it out.
Yeah. That's going to be one pointy backpack full of hooks. Yeah. So a lot of times when you buy musky lures, they just come just like lure with the hooks. And it's like, they're not in a package or anything. They're just like, here you go. And you're like, great, where do I put this?
Which brings up another great point is with that backpack, I'm not sure if you already have that written down, but bring an empty tackle tray because that can be something if you, especially going through the tackle swap section, it does not come in a nice plastic box. Some of the guys will have like hook covers on it and those are, thank you to those guys. Like you're going above and beyond to make sure I don't get holes in the middle of my back from when Jesse decides to throw another lure back there. But if you bring your own empty tackle tray, you can fill that up with whatever you want and not have to worry about those hooks hurting anything else that you purchased.
The next thing you have to do is strategize your route. So we always do this. Me and Andrew look at the show, be like, hey, we got to hit this, we got to hit this. And certain times in certain order, sometimes you're like, I want to hit this first because this is important to me. And maybe they have limited amounts of stuff. But make sure you look through a floor plan if you can for a show. Because oftentimes you'll go through a show and you'll be like, I didn't even see that booth that I was looking for. I didn't even see them. And you probably walk by them like 3 times. But if you have access to floor plan or even like a vendor list, then you can kind of plan and make sure you hit everything that you want to do. Because some of these shows, they're pretty big. Like the Sportsman show is huge. CanCast is absolutely massive. You will literally go through the show and miss stuff completely. I remember one time we were looking for Sheldon from Jacked Up Jigs. And he's like, hey, he was like texting me or messaging me on Instagram. He's like, hey, I saw you guys walk past like 3 times. I was like, dude, I didn't even see you. Like I was looking for you. It's just like, it's a lot. It's a lot.
We'll see something 3 booths down and start walking towards it and pass by like 3 other guys that were just...
I didn't see nothing. And the last thing I would say is make friends. And I don't mean like make friends with strangers, but like network. You will meet a lot of people from, social media, maybe people that, you've been messaging or following on Instagram or YouTube or whatever for years. And you kind of feel like you know them, but you've never actually met them. This is the time that you can go up to these guys and talk to them, And they're just guys. Don't be like shy. Like, again, not us, but like even people like Bob Azumi. He's just a dude, man. Like go up and say hi to him. Mm-hmm. He's more than happy to say hi to you. But talk to people. Like you'll be at a booth and start talking about something. And some guy's like, hey, I like doing that too. Start talking because you're at a show, a fishing show, especially CanCast. You're at a fishing show or you're at Muskie Odyssey where people that are in that arena are insanely obsessed with fishing just like you when you're there. There are no better places to meet fishing friends than right there. Now, don't get kidnapped. Don't go into someone's van. Don't do anything weird. But
I got some new iCast releases in the trunk. You want to come take a look?
Don't do that. And if Andrew says hi, run for your life. So anyway, depending on how this happened, if you're listening to this after CanCast, I hope that you guys got some great stuff. I hope that you guys had a great time. Let us know. Send us an email. Message us on Instagram. We'd like to see your loot. Send us a picture of your loot. That would be awesome. And if you're listening to this before CanCast, have fun. And literally, if you see us, make sure you say hi. All right. So we are not going to talk about CanCast until next year now. So we promise.
Until we talk about what we bought there ourselves.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, guys. One more episode. Just kidding. So this episode, again, we're talking about weird stuff. And like me and Andrew are weird guys. We like talking about weird stuff. We've had a lot of weird experiences happen to us over the last few years. And again, if you don't know, me and Andrew have been fishing together, I'd say we're coming on 25 years.
Yeah.
Fishing together.
Yeah.
At least 20
right.
plus anyway. Coming up on 25. So we've been fishing together for a long time. And I look back at some pictures and like, sometimes on your phone, you get like the Google photos, like it'll be like, remember this day? And a picture will come up and it'll be like me and Andrew when we were like 13, just like holding like a bunch of rock bass. I'm like, man, we were legit back then.
Boy, I wish you could catch like that again.
I'll never beat that, man. One cool thing about me and Andrew is of all the trips that we've had over the years, we have thousands of pictures. We could take lots of pictures of like the stupidest stuff ever. But in the photos, oftentimes you'll see a lot of weird stuff. And it's stuff that if you showed someone the picture, you'd really have to be like, but let me explain, because they're just like so weird. And lots of other stuff we've seen, unfortunately, we didn't get pictures of. So this episode, we're going to talk about that stuff. I'm pretty excited about this.
This is like a nice long best of story time kind of thing.
Yeah. And we're going to try to keep these a little bit short because we do have some ones, like I said, from listeners as well that are pretty funny. So anyway, we're going to start off with weird wildlife encounters. Now, I don't know if you remember this, a few episodes ago, Andrew was talking about cobra chickens or Canada geese. And I was saying like, yeah, I was fishing and a goose, is hissing at me. We're going to go a little weirder than that. So getting chased by a goose, that's not really weird. That's normal in Canada. That's like the rite of passage for any fisherman is getting chased by a Canada goose. But we'll start off with Andrew. What are some weird wildlife encounters that you have had when you've been fishing or when we've been fishing together?
Well, I have to start this off with a question. Have you ever heard of the Wendigo?
I have.
It's not that weird, thank goodness. I'm still alive.
Oh.
But there was like sometimes what your mind makes up can be scarier than what reality is, right? Thankfully, that was the case, but we were camping with our friend James, actually. So it was myself, Jesse, and James, and we paddled out to this, we were in the canoe, this was a few years ago, we paddled out to this island to go camping, and all of a sudden we hear this like massive splash. This is a fairly small island, but this massive splash, and we're like, what is going on? And we look in the water, and we see this like black thing swimming through the water. Big black thing with like a wake behind it.
This was also in the middle of the night.
Yes, this is pitch black outside. Yeah. There's a little bit of like a sliver of a moon and some stars out. At first, I'm like, okay, that's just like a beaver. We scared a beaver. It's fine. It's all it is, because that's it. Just you see this black thing on top of the water and a wake behind it. So it's going along at pretty good speed. And then there's this really small island, maybe 20 feet square, just about 100 yards offshore. And that's what this thing is swimming towards. And as it reaches the shoreline of it, it starts climbing out. We're like, okay, you see a beaver, but then it stands up. This was not a beaver. And it first thought, whenever you're camping, I don't know about anyone else listening, but if I have an unidentified large mammalian animal, my immediate thought is that a bear?
Yeah.
And this thing was pretty beefy, and a wet bear looks pretty slim, I'll tell you that much. When they, all the hair gets matted down and stuff. It's not a big fluffy ball. We couldn't see very well. It was far enough away and dark enough, and we were kind of like on edge that whole night. That's when I actually caught my first walleye and it was on a jitterbug while fishing that back stretch of water.
Yeah.
But we had a kind of restless night, and in the morning we went fishing, and you know what we saw? We saw this beautiful deer on the island, and we spooked this deer when he arrived at night. And it decided its safest option was to swim away. But I was shocked, because this deer was living on this island, which is not very big. I'd say maybe a half-acre island. And we would just never see it during the day.
Which is
we
weird.
saw it once. And we had no idea this thing was there. So it was shocking for us. But that was the first kind of odd thing that scared me the most of an animal I couldn't identify at the time.
Yeah, I remember that. And that wasn't just a few years ago. That was like 15 years ago.
Yeah. I don't think I have my driver's license yet.
I got a pretty interesting one. There was this one trip I went camping, a bit of a back lake, one of those lakes where it's like no motors, no trolling motors. At the time I had a fishing kayak, and I was paddling out, and the spot that I wanted to fish was a good paddle. Like, it's about a 45-minute paddle to get to the spot I wanted to get to. And I wanted to get there as the sun was coming up, or even before then, because it's a beautiful, like, largemouth bass area. And I got into the water. It was pitch dark, because I knew, I'm like, if I want to get there in time, I got to give myself like an hour to get there before sunrise. So I'm paddling in pitch dark, terrible mosquitoes. And I have like kind of my bearings as to where I'm going, but at the same time, some of the areas where it would turn into like a Y, you'd be like, do I go left or do I get right? I forget. But anyway, I'm going across, and it's all foggy, and I'm gonna get lost, man. Like, I know I fished this lake, so many times, but I couldn't see anything, and I'm like, oh man, this is terrible. And all of a sudden, the fog starts to lift a little bit. I'm like, okay, good. And I see this thing like swimming across the lake in front of me, and I was like, that's weird. Again, I thought it was a beaver, just like Andrew said. Usually you see a head sticking out of the water and you're like, it's a beaver, right? But it was small, and it was black, and it was black all the way back. Like, it wasn't like a beaver tail. It was like furry all the way back. And I'm like, what the heck is this? So I start paddling towards it. Turns out I didn't see it because it was still dark until I got close. It was a legit skunk. A skunk was swimming across like the channel of this like narrows where the lake kind of bottlenecked down. And it was a full-size huge skunk swimming across the lake. And I'm like, I didn't even know skunks could swim. Apparently, I looked up after. Apparently, they swim all the time. I just never seen one. But its tail was like floating on top of the water. And the only thing, I got so close to it because I didn't realize what it was. And I was like, I hope this thing can't legit like spray me underwater. Imagine that. Just like somehow it dives down and just sticks its butt in the air and just sprays me in my canoe. I was like, dude.
And all your lures never worked again.
Yeah. I was like, man, I got skunked. But I thought it was so weird. And after I got to the back spot, I caught a bunch of fish. I went back and I was actually talking to like one of the camp guys there. And he was just like, oh yeah, they swim all the time. I was like, I've never even heard of a skunk swimming, but apparently they do it all the time. So I guess it's not really a weird sighting, but it was super weird for me. But it was also very cool at the same time. I just wish it wasn't super dark. I would have tried to get like some footage of it swimming across.
We've had some odd animals that we've seen fishing. Like, it's creepy when you see a lamprey squeal between your legs when you're fishing a creek. Like, it's creepy. It reminds me, I was fishing for sunfish, and this is going back years. I was probably around 9 or 10 years old, and I was fishing for sunfish in this little like shallow bay by a boat launch. And the place was known for water snakes, but most of them you'd catch are like a foot and a half long. Jesse has been here. He remembers growing, visiting us in the summer, going here.
Tons of them.
So many water snakes. So I like growing up as a country boy, I love just catching snakes and whatnot. There is this one. I had never been afraid to pick up a snake. Like obviously I wouldn't pick up a rattlesnake, but I was never afraid to catch like a garter snake or a water snake or anything like that. I loved doing it. But I was catching these little sunfish, like 3, 4, 5 inches long, and all of a sudden, my bobber, it goes under, and I set the hook, and I'm like, okay, excellent. And all of a sudden, the rod just folds over, and I'm like, oh, excellent! I've caught a bass, halfway through my little fishing, and the odd time it would happen. I look down, and it looked yellow, and I think that was just the tannic water, but it looked like nuclear yellow to me. And this thing was over 3 feet long, this huge water snake, and I had never seen an adult one and how big they can get. And the patterning on them, they kind of can have almost like a diamond pattern on them, similar to rattlesnakes. But this water snake had grabbed this like 3-inch sunfish that I was catching under a bobber, and it was putting up a fight. Like you'd think just a noodle on a line would just kind of pull through the water. These things are impressively strong underwater. So it had let go. Thankfully, when I tried to lift it out of the water, the rod like folding over, but it let go of the sunfish. But that was the only time I was ever really afraid to touch a snake, just because it was moving so quick and so strong. It was just surprisingly strong. It definitely threw me for a loop. When you're out fishing, you're going to see absolutely anything and everything pretty much when it comes to wildlife.
I remember too, there's this one lake that I've been camping at the last few years, and it is full of water snakes, like full. Like I've been to very few lakes where you could literally say, yeah, this lake is full of snakes. This one is like the top one. Like I see them every time I'm fishing, I see multiple water snakes. But yeah, I was standing in the water and it was a backcountry site. So I couldn't really beach my canoe because there wasn't any like dirt or sand. It was just like all rock shoreline. So I had to like wedge my canoe between like a bush on the side between a log. And while I was there must have been like a huge water snake on that log. And as I was like kind of walking through like knee-high water, I felt like something rub against my leg. And I thought it was just like a branch from like the bush on the shore. And then I looked down and there's this like 3-foot long water snake right between my legs, just swimming through my legs. And I was like, oh, but yeah, it was pretty cool. They're cool to see from a distance. As long as I know where they are, I'm cool. But if they're like...
Same thing with snapping turtles.
Oh, yeah.
I love looking at them. They're really cool. But when I'm wet wading and I see like, I'm standing on the edge of a drop off and you start seeing like just the whole turtle head just come and just look at your toes. Yeah. That happened to me, again, fishing backcountry. Like that was the moment that made me terrified of being in the water with snapping turtles. Yeah. Would he have ever bit my toe if I didn't jump out of the water instantly seeing him? I don't know. Maybe from his perspective, he just saw something wiggling at the edge of a drop off, but he came like up from the depths and like was staring at it. It's terrifying.
Yeah. It just always reminds me of that Instagram reel. Remember that lady that's like, oh my Lord, a snapping turtle. I've caught a few of those in my time, and usually we just cut the line because what are you going to do? Like, I'm not going to try to like get a hook out from like, if they swallow a worm or something, I'm like, yeah, they'll be fine. Yeah. Those things are like dinosaurs. Mm-hmm. All right. So yeah, we have seen a lot of weird stuff. I'm sure you guys have too, especially when you're fishing kind of like up north, kind of backcountry lakes and stuff like that. There's lots of wildlife that will get pretty close to you because they're not used to being, around so many things. A lot of the more popular lakes and like the Kawarthas near us or stuff like that, it may not be as common to see as much wildlife, but the next segment we're going to talk about is strangest things that we've caught. And we're not talking about fish here. Maybe we're talking about fish, but it could be anything. And I'll start this one off quick. I've caught a lot of weird stuff. To preface that, I have fished in a lot of marinas over the years. And it seems like marinas are kind of like the catching point for a lot of junk that floats down the creek. So I grew up down the road from a local marina. So when I was like a teenager, I used to fish there all the time. Whenever Andrew came to visit, we'd go down and fish down there. And the cool thing about fishing marinas in Lake Ontario is you never know what the heck you're going to catch, right? Like, obviously, if you go in the spring, you might catch a rainbow trout, and you go in the fall, you might catch a salmon. But the rest of the year, it's kind of like you never know. Like, you could catch a sheephead, You could catch rock bass, largemouth, smallmouth. I've caught giant walleye, caught freshwater drum, brown trout. Like you never know. It could be carp, could be anything.
Yep.
And that's the cool thing, right? I love that. Like I said, they kind of like collect a lot of weird stuff. And we're going to go into, I know the one Andrew's thinking about because that's something that just happened the other day, but I'm not going to take that one from him. He tells the story way better. But I'll tell you something weird that I caught. You know, like the traditional or the classic thing, someone's like, I caught a boot. I literally did catch a boot one time. And it was a work boot. So it fought like heck. Like I was casting out, I forget what I was fishing, just some fishing lure, like a spoon or something. And there's this one area where it's like a big sand flat and then it just drops down. And where it drops down, a lot of the fish, they kind of sit there. So I was like whipping my lure as far as I could. And I'm just reeling in. And I must have been just like dragging bottom on the way back. I wasn't paying attention. All of a sudden, I felt like I snagged something. I was like, oh, set the hook. Because I thought it was a fish, of course. Hook sets are free. Not a fish. Just dragging weight. And I'm like, okay, I snagged something. I dragged this thing all the way back in. It was a waterlogged size 13 like work boot. And it was like full of sand and like fungus. And I finally was like, I'm trying to pull it up. I'm using like 10-pound line. I was like afraid it was going to snap. And it was a legit boot. So the legend lives on. You can catch boots and they do fight pretty good.
I have a somewhat similar story. I was fishing a jig, just a regular ball head jig and a twister tail on it. And just fishing off the dock. And I was just popping along bottom, and all of a sudden I feel like, oh, it's a snag. And so I tried to pop it, didn't move. But I felt it shift a bit. I'm like, okay, it's a fish. So I set the hook, and I feel something like a lot of weight, and then it gives. And I feel this thing like slow head shakes, and then it would kind of like roll, and it got lighter. I'm like, this thing feels alive. I'm like, is this? I thought maybe it's either I hooked a turtle, or I thought maybe it's like a catfish or something like that. It felt weird. It wasn't pulling down, but it was a lot of resistance, but it was constantly changing. And when I finally pulled it up, this thing fought me all the way back to the dock, and I had caught just the top strap of a flip-flop. So this whole thing is like this big flat thing. It's kind of like wiggling like a lipless crank towards me, and then it would like flip and roll. So it was giving the illusion of something was somewhat alive on the end of this line because it wasn't inherently heavy, just had a lot of water resistance.
It's like when you're casting for Chinook like a spoon and your line catches on the hook and it's just like reeling in like this way.
Yeah.
Oh man.
But it was just like it wasn't a big flip flop. I don't know what size it was. Mine didn't have a size written on it, but it was just like a little flip flop. But man, that thing, it made me think of all those Archie comics when they're like, oh, I got a bite, and they pull up the boot. It's like that would never happen, and boy, was I wrong.
Yeah. There's so much random stuff that, I have found, not necessarily hooked, but we found a lot of weird stuff over the years. But let's tell the story of the head.
Okay.
But also the glove.
Yes. Oh, you have to start. So we were fishing for salmon in the canoe. And so we're trolling around. We just troll this big loop, essentially, in this kind of sheltered area. And as we're trolling around, it's trolling in the evenings. The sun's dipping down. And I look at something in the water as we pass by it in the first week that we're fishing the spot. I'm like, there's a lot of debris, like just scum floating around and stuff. There's lots of debris in the water. But I'm like, that kind of looked like a hand. But it was just far enough away when I noticed it. I'm like, it's just a trick of the eye, right?
Yeah.
And then we kept trolling. And then all of a sudden, Jesse thinks he thinks he has a hit. And I look down at his rod tip because his rod tip's in the water to prevent this debris sliding down his line, all this floating weeds and stuff. So he feels like this tap on his rod. And I look back and it's like a leather work glove, like and the rod tip is like in its clutches almost, and it kind of like slides off the end of the rod. But it was heavy. We don't know, and we still don't know because we didn't see the hand again after that. It was 100% a glove with potentially something still inside the glove. We don't know.
Was it a hand? I don't know.
So skip forward to, I think it was 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
We're fishing the same area, and we've been trolling around all night, and then we start coming around to come back into shore, and it's now black. I've got the flashlight out spotting to make sure we're not hitting any of the logs or anything in the way. And we come by, and I'm like, Jesse, what is that? And we see eyes looking at us, and we find a head floating on top of the water.
Yep.
And so we circle around, we come back, we actually have some Instagram post that we had about it. We started filming, like, what is this thing? And I grab the net and I scoop it up and I take a look at it. And sure enough, it is a high-end mannequin head that has all the hair plugs in it for like hairdressing school. But the hair is all like eaten away, like shredded. It's not in good shape. It does not look pretty. But we found this head, and we were kind of joking, like, is this the head that goes with the hand earlier? Is this like a decoy when then, like, oh, they won't look for the rest of the real body because we found the fake head. Like,
Yeah.
But yeah, I took the head home and then I put it in the office, the shop at the office, just behind a closed door, and just waited for the office staff to kind of find this decapitated head sitting on a shelf.
It looked
Good
very
times.
realistic. Like it wasn't just
It
like
was a
one of
high-end
those
mannequin head.
Yeah, it was a high-end head. And it looked legit like a movie prop.
It was like, and it had like hard inside, but like it had silicone skin or whatever. Like it actually had,
Yeah.
it wasn't just like a plastic head. Like this thing was very, supposedly to it looked very natural. Like it was weird. We're like, yes, I feel safe being here in the dark.
Well, another one that we're going to talk about is weird people that we've seen, not necessarily in the water, but weird things that we've seen, people that we've seen in the water, at the boat ramp, in other boats. I'm sure we've all have stories of like Karens, but there has been some weird stuff that we've seen over the years or people that we've seen. Definitely a lot, because we do fish in the greater Toronto area. We do see a lot of weirdos, Mm-hmm. Do any come to your mind, Andrew, of something weird encounter that you've had with someone?
I mean, there's been a few where it's just like you said, the ones you expect to have of people yelling at you for fishing near their dock or whatever. Like, yeah, like that'll happen. The oddest ones, and it still shocks me that this happens, but when you're fishing from shore, especially down by like the walking paths and stuff like that, and you catch a fish, and then you already all of a sudden have like 2-3 people like starting their own bidding war trying to buy this fish off you.
Yeah.
Like, it seems crazy to say, especially for someone who doesn't fish areas like that, but that has happened to me more than once, and I know has happened to Jesse more than once. Like, this is, it's not an everyday occurrence, but it's definitely not a standalone one either.
Yeah. Actually, speaking of that, I was fishing off one of the piers for salmon or something like that, I forget, and I caught a salmon. And as I was fighting it, there was like 4 or 5 people behind me, and they were like, oh, just watching me and whatever. Like, it's a bit of a show. If you don't fish, it's exciting. If you fish, it's exciting. But if you don't fish, it's like, it's amazing. Like, oh, man, this guy's a fish on. So many people would come up to me and be like, there's salmon in here. It's like, yeah. Anyway, so I catch the salmon. It wasn't even a big one. It was like a 12-pounder maybe. One of my buddies I was fishing with scooped it up, got the hook out, took a quick pick. And they were like trying to buy it off of me. The chick was like, oh, how much do you want for it? And I was like, oh, we're going to throw it back. She's like, no. I'll give you, I forget, like $40, $20. And I was like, no, I can't sell fish. It's against the law. Oh, no, it's fine. It's like, it's not fine. How do I know that you're not an undercover M&R agent? And as soon as I'm like, yeah, I'll take the $20, you slap cuffs on me. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, that's exactly what an M&R agent would say. So I threw it back, and I feel bad for them. Because when you throw back a fish like that, they're just like, oh, like it's the worst thing. Like, you just threw away $50 fish, and it's like, it's fine. You can catch one yourself. Like, no, just give it to me. Yeah, but it's happened to me multiple times. And usually it's off like a pier or something like that.
Yeah.
And especially when it's a salmon. People see a salmon and they're like, oh, that's like, you buy a piece of salmon at Costco and it's like $50 for like not even a full side of salmon. So they see a salmon like that and it's like, that's like $100 fish, right? Mm-hmm. But, again, we do keep the odd salmon, but we're not going to keep everyone that we catch. And it depends on the time of the year, right? You're not going to keep a salmon that's gross. Some people will. We don't.
I think the only other thing that comes to my mind when I'm thinking of weird people, and it wasn't so much a weird occurrence, but Jess and I were fishing on this backcountry camping site in my canoe, and we're paddling across the lake, and this guy is just like, we've been fishing all day. We're coming back to the campsite to have like a late lunch. And this guy's in his little, canoe, their kayak that he's paddling around. And he looks over and he just starts yelling at us. He's like, hey, that's a nice canoe, but you should wash it. There's been like some watermarks and stains on it because it just gets stored in the backyard. And so this guy, we kept joking the whole rest of the trip. We're like, what's with this guy being like, nice canoe, you should wash it. Meanwhile, he's out there in a kayak weighing about 300 pounds with a tank top that's like oil stained and has holes in it. It's like, nice shirt, maybe get a new one. Like, there's some people, they want to say something because they're gonna want to find some sort of issue with you.
Yeah, and we'll still say that. I'll see Andrew's truck, it'll be dirty. I'm like, nice canoe, you should wash it. I think another interesting story of an experience that I had of she wasn't necessarily a weirdo, but the situation was very weird. So I was fishing in my kayak. This was back in the day. I was fishing one of the Kawartha lakes, popular lake. Early, the sun just came up. I was fishing lily pads and slop for largemouth. A problem that a lot of people that own cottages have is the cobra chickens or the Canada goose, right? So they'll come up on your property and they'll crap all over the place. So they don't want them.
That green poop everywhere.
Yeah, it's gross. So this lady, I was in a kayak. I was stealth mode. I had quietly paddled up to the spot. It's like, when there's slop and lily pads everywhere, but then the person has a boat. So there's like a thick, like wide channel that cuts through because they bring their boat in and out. Those spots are awesome for fish, especially in the morning. So I'd snuck up to this spot and I'm like literally, whipping a frog right down there. And there's all these Canada geese like on her property and in the water. And I'm fishing there quietly and I just hear like her screen door from the back of her cottage open. She steps out. She's like in a house coat with like one of those like hair, bonnets on. She pulls out a legit BB gun or a pellet gun or something. And she just starts shooting at them. And she smokes my kayak like 100%. It's like ding, like I was like, whoa. And she didn't see me there. And she just like looks over at me quick. She's like, I'm sorry. And she shuts the door. I was like, oh, good thing she was wearing clothes when she came out. But yeah, we have one more story about seeing a person in the early morning. We'll try to keep this PG.
I was about to say,
So
you're talking about the person on the balcony?
Yeah, we were fishing one time. We're quiet. When you're fishing and you're quiet and you're just like, it's early in the morning. Usually you start talking by, lunchtime, but it's early in the morning. It's quiet.
You don't want to break the silence. Like that moment is
beautiful, like loons going and everything. And we're fishing around this island. And when we come around the side of the island, we're like pretty much underneath this like little cliff. And there's this beautiful cottage at the top of this like little cliff. And there's like a second floor balcony, obviously their bedroom. And this person comes out
with a cup of coffee, just enjoying the day. There's a cup of coffee and they're just staring off into the distance.
Just quietly. And I look up and I'm like,
with no neighbors around.
Is that person nude? And he's like, because like I wear glasses, so like I'm wearing sunglasses, so I can't really see. And Andrew's like,
Jesse's squinting.
I'm like, is that person nude? And he's like, yes. And then we get closer, and he's like, it's a dude, it's a dude, it's a dude. And we just turn the boat around.
Because as we're there, I'm like, is that a guy or a girl? And we're just fishing still, getting closer, trolling up closer, and we couldn't tell it was a guy or a girl just because there were shadows being shown. But then once we got close enough and we got the right angle between the slats and the railing, we're like, this is a guy.
It's like, I'm out of here. And I'm almost positive that guy saw us and was just power flexing. He was just like, this is my balcony. And we're like, see you later, pal. I'm out of here.
You wish you could have this. I'm like, I do. Dang it. I want to be on a balcony with no neighbors, being able to drink coffee in the nude.
Oh, good times.
The Canadian dream.
Remember, fishing loons and the average Ontario anglers do not condone being nude in the wilderness where people can see you. Anyway, yeah, we've seen a lot of weird people, and I'll end off with probably the weirdest situation that I had. I was river fishing for steelhead, and as you know, a lot of the steelhead streams in Ontario, they come off Lake Ontario, and they run through the GTA. You're talking like Toronto, Oshawa, Bowmanville. Like some of these places are a bit rough. You could say that. Some of them are a bit sketchy. A lot of crackheads, we'll say. I was fishing under a bridge one time. There's this beautiful hole underneath the bridge. Most bridges have, just a perfect hole right underneath. And I could see, the water's pretty clear, but I could see there's all these steelhead down there. And I was fishing and I didn't have my waders at the time. So I was just fishing from shore. I had like rubber boots on that only, they're only like 12 inches high. And I'm fishing under the bridge and this like legit crackhead comes up to me and starts talking to me. And I'm just like, when someone's talking to you and you're like, all right, maybe if I don't respond, they won't pay attention to me.
Yes.
This guy was
social
like
cues that I'm not interested by not turning towards them. One word answers or just like, just like not looking.
So I'm fishing, trying to be quiet, floating this beautiful pool. And this guy's like talking to me, like crazy talk, like legit crazy stuff. And I'm just like, and I start like slowly like walking into the water in my rubber boots. And I literally got to like the rim of the rubber boots. I was like, I can't go any further or else I'm going to fill up with water. And I actually ended up catching a fish and the guy was like stoked. Like I will say this though. He was super happy for me when I caught that fish. And when I released it, he kept talking and talking. And I was like, you know what? I'm out of here. And I was like, oh, I'll see you later, man. And I just like booked it back to the next spot. But he was genuinely stoked for me when I caught that fish. So I really appreciate that. He didn't even give me like, Andrew doesn't even give me a tenth of what this guy gave me when I catch a big fish. So Andrew, you got to work on that.
Most of the time, I'm sober.
Most of the time, yeah. All right, this last part of the segment we're going to talk about is weird things that we've seen fish do. Now, I don't know if you have one that came to your mind first, Andrew, but I have one that happened to us recently. But you go first. See if it's the same one.
Well, mine involves a bass and a log.
Okay, you go.
So we're coming across in this bay and we see this like standalone. There's lots of fallen timber. It's kind of a flooded lake that they had cut down a lot of logs. And so you get these, 10, 12 feet of water, but the tree is just cut off like at the height of the water, which is really dangerous when you're trying to motor around and you can't see it at night.
Yeah. But
we come around the side of this log and we see this smallmouth and we're like, okay, let's try pitching the Senko there. Just, there's bass around. Why not? We bring the extra rod. So we start flipping the Senko and nothing. Like the Senko's rolling down like the log right in front of his face. And this bass is just staring like 3 inches from this log, just facing it, staring at it. We're dropping these, like we're flipping jigs or we're dropping these baits. We're letting it roll like right off the fish's face. And it's just not moving, just staring like,
yeah.
It's his favorite TV show right in front of him, and he just can't get his attention away.
The log
That's
show.
what this bass was doing. Like, we have no idea. I'm like, I don't even remember if that thing swam away. I think it just stayed there.
It was in a trance.
I think we tapped it with the rod, and finally, after giving a few taps to the rod tip, it actually like moved finally.
Yeah.
We're like, this thing, is it diseased or what?
It wasn't even in the shade. It was like in full sun. I was like, this fish is weird. It was
such a bizarre thing. I've never seen a bass be so like non-concerned about its surroundings.
That fish was a unit. It wasn't afraid of anything. Remember that weird salmon that we saw? Again, we were trolling, flatline trolling.
The coho.
The coho. So like we're fishing a river mouth where some creeks have cohos in them, some don't. Or the ones that don't, they do, but they're not as common at all. It'll be like for every 100 Chinook, there's 2 coho. In other creeks, they have a lot of coho. We're fishing a creek that does not have a lot of coho. In fact, I've never caught one in the creek. I've caught lots of them in other creeks, but not in this creek. But anyway, we're trolling around this river mouth, and I've seen guys catch cohos in the river mouth very rarely, once in a while. And we're trolling, we kind of do like a figure 8 loop around this like deep basin area. And we see this fish like surfacing. When you're fishing for salmon, if you've never done it before, when they're in the harbors thick, they just surface and jump out of the water all over the place.
You'll see them porpoise.
Yeah. Sometimes right beside you, like you'll be in your boat sitting there and one will jump like 3 feet beside you because they don't see the canoe. They're boom, they just jump up. So anyway, we're going around and we see this fish like surfacing, and every time we see it, it jumps. It's smaller because Chinook are pretty big. They're like 15 to 20 pound average. This fish was like 10, and it was like silver, like silver.
Yes.
And every time we saw it jump, we're like, man, that fish is that's a dime. That thing's beautiful. And it kept like coming up and just swimming along the surface as if it didn't know it couldn't swim deeper than 8 inches of water, and it was in 35 feet of water.
Yeah, it'd be tail down, head up, and just kind of like swimming with like not a wake in front of its head, the top of its head like out of like on the surface of the water, and it's just like going around in like a circle, swimming in a circle. Yeah, it was so weird.
It's like something. Maybe he got caught or something and smacked on the head.
Maybe he jumped right into the side of like the pier or something. Like
something was wrong with this fish, but it kept like swimming along the surface. So many times, like even right near our boat, like we'd be fishing and it would be like 10 feet from the boat, just swimming there. And then sometimes you look at it and it would look normal. And then you look back and it would be like face up again. You're like, that's so weird. And we got so close to it. We looked at it and we're like, that thing is gorgeous. It's too bad. Yeah. But yeah, just like, it's weird. And it kept doing that all night. And I saw it the next day too. It's still there. Mm-hmm. I wonder if some guy just went by and just scooped up with a net. It's like, dinner. That's illegal. You can't do that. Some of the things I was thinking about, you've probably seen some weird stuff about fish coming right up to the boat and trying to eat your bait. That may not be weird, especially if you're a musky guy or girl, because that's probably where you get 70% of your bites is like right beside the boat. The fish follows it in And just as you kind of take it away and change the speed beside the boat, the fish like grabs it, right? But I think the last story of fish doing weird things, this isn't really weird. This is just impressive. One time, me and Andrew were fishing this back lake, canoes only, just calm, beautiful, early morning. We'd fished this area, slammed a bunch of fish on topwater frogs. Like this lake, you could fish any bait and you'd slam fish. Like it doesn't matter. Like, so we're like, hey, topwater frog, that's fun. So that's all we would do all day. Didn't matter because the fish would hit anything. But anyway, I was like, man, I was saying to Andrew how these fish are so dumb. They'd probably hit anything. You probably could cast out a cigarette butt and catch a fish on them, right? So we're eating our lunch and he has his rod hanging off the side of the boat. Remember that? His scum frog? His scum frog is like on the end of his line, probably a foot and a half above the water, I'd say. Just hanging off the side of the canoe. And he has this like, his rod against the canoe and he's eating a sandwich or something. And all of a sudden we hear this like big splash and his rod starts bending and almost flips his rod into the water. A bass jumped out of the water, grabbed his frog a foot and a half above the water, grabbed it, swam down, and just set the hook itself when the rod kind of got stuck between his leg and was fully hooked. And it was like a 2-pound bass.
Yeah. Most of the time when you have something like jump out of the water, it's like, whoa, that's crazy. And nothing comes of it. This thing, like I hooked and landed it.
Yeah. And it was an impressive, like, it was a decent sized fish. It wasn't impressive. It was a 2-pound bass, but like, it wasn't like it was like 8 inches long. Like, this thing was a legit fish. And I've seen videos of bass jumping up to grab stuff, but the accuracy, like to jump almost 2 feet out of the air and grab a frog and then dive underneath the boat and try to escape. You should have saw Andrew's face. I wish I had my camera running, but he was just like eating a bologna sandwich or something. And just like looks off to the side in like a split second, like, what the heck's happening? Oh man, we ate that bass. Just kidding. No, we threw him back.
He deserved to go free.
You ever catch a fish? Like sometimes we're fishing and, maybe you're going to fill your cooler, right? Like, we do that sometimes. But you'll catch a specific fish and you're like, you know what? This guy deserves to live. And you throw him back for whatever reason. That was a perfect example of that. I'm like, you know what? That's impressive. You deserve to live. Go tell your friends about the athletic challenges that you just accomplished. Oh, man. So anyway, we have some listener weird stories. Now, these are pretty short, but some of them are pretty interesting. And I'll go through just a few of them because there's quite a few. These are weird things that people have seen or caught, or just a compilation of all these questions that we just talked about today. So Seth said that the weirdest thing he saw or caught was catching a smallmouth bass and a channel catfish at the same time on a chug bug. That's pretty impressive. I have caught 2 bass on a jerkbait at the same time, which blew my mind. But a catfish and a bass at the same time, that's like 1,000,000 to 1 odds. That's pretty insane. See, we were nice, though. We didn't make people vet this to actually prove it. So maybe all these are lies. I don't know. So someone named Heather said the weirdest thing she saw was her weird cousin. That's Andrew. I agree. NT Fish said, one time I caught myself. True story. Andrew's caught himself many times.
Yep.
George says he caught a rock bass on a musky whopper plopper. I believe that.
Believe it.
Yeah.
Yep. I caught a seagull on a super shad reb.
Impressive. And he unhooked it. That was a successful catch and release.
Successful release of a seagull.
And someone offered him $20 for it too.
Yeah.
705 Angler said the weirdest thing he caught was a cob of corn. Was it eaten or did it still have niblets on it? That's what I want to know. Send me pics. All right. Wambates Canada. He says that Andrew guy is pretty weird. ... It's true.
I'm denoting a theme.
Yeah. And notice how none of these are about me. Just saying, people. All right. Rumblefish Adventures. We actually did a podcast with him last year in the fall. Super nice guy. He said he caught a brick on a crankbait. That thing would fight. I have caught rocks and I don't know how. It's a smooth rock. My hook will somehow find the only small area where it can prick into. And like, you can't shake it off. It's crazy. Rocks are crazy.
We've got rocks because the clams, like the muscles in the side of it, will grab your bait or your line, and oftentimes right on the hook, like inside of the clam, but the whole rock will come out.
Yeah. To add to the clam thing, like I know I posted this, I think we talked about this in the podcast before, but I just posted this on Instagram a few weeks ago. I caught a legit clam on a flipping bait. Like I was flipping a Texas rig bait with like a, 1/2 ounce tungsten. I was flipping around some docks, wiggle, wiggle, pull, wiggle, wiggle. Felt like just like weight reeled it in. It was a full clam and it had clamped down completely over my my bait. But it was super weird. And then when I posted on Instagram, a bunch of people sent me pictures of clams that they had caught as well. I don't know if it was a clam or a mussel. I forget. Jason Barnus actually sent me the actual scientific name of the clam that I caught. I was like, thanks, Jason. Jason also is, he's a fish biologist. So
yeah,
we actually did an episode with Jason Barnus as well. We have to get him on again. I love that guy.
I want to get him on again to talk primarily about bait fish. And
I just want to talk about clams now.
But it made me think of, remember, I think we were with Ryan. I think it was a French River.
Yep.
And we got skunked, but Ryan managed to catch, was it 3 or 4 mussels in a row?
On musky lures.
On musky lure. How in the world?
He was dragging bottom.
But it's every single time you go and the hook is coming out the side of the shell and stuff. These things were literally hooked every single time.
Because I think what happens is when they're sitting on say they're on a brake line or something or on rocks and they're sitting open and your line kind of goes through them. And I think that when the line's going through them, they don't really do anything. But as you're reeling, as soon as your bait kind of starts going through them, they shut on it. Maybe he was just dragging the bottom or hitting rocks or something.
To line 4 different ones within a half-hour time period.
Ryan has skill though.
It's impressive. Yeah, at that point we realized he was doing it on purpose and not just, happenstance.
And we didn't actually get skunked that trip. It was a muskie trip. We didn't catch any muskie, but we did catch a bunch of pike. Not that matters. We did literally get skunked. But speaking of getting skunked, Muskie Maniacs comments this. They said they were out on a skunk day, not seeing any fish, but they found 2 $20 bills floating out in the middle of the lake.
Those are mine, by the way. I need them back.
Yeah.
I'll find you at CanCast. Don't worry about it.
Honestly, if I found $40 floating when I went muskie fishing, I'd be like, heck yeah.
Looks like I'm getting a new believer.
Nice. Not even. So Brian went fishing again. He said that the weirdest thing he saw was a star-like thing moving erratically in the sky while we were backcountry camping. I've heard a lot of stories of people swearing on the Bible that they've seen some kind of weird UFO-esque creature or lights, especially when they're up north in Algonquin. I've heard many people say that. So yeah, I believe it. I believe you saw something, that's for sure. So this is a cool one. Raw milk cheese. I actually saw this guy at Gagnon Sports one time. He said that the weirdest thing he ever saw or caught was a carp while trolling for salmon, line set at 75 feet over 150 feet of water, flasher and a spoon, and a carp hit it. Now, I know a lot of people will probably say no, I don't believe that. But we were fishing with Canadian Cowboy Outdoors 2 years ago.
Brad Scott.
Yeah, he caught a carp on a chatterbait.
Yeah,
I've seen guys catch them at the harbor
and not like
on
snag,
little Cleos. Yeah.
Hooked in the mouth chatterbait.
Yep. Remember, those big carp get big because they eat meat. They're not just sucking little midges out of the little nymphs and stuff off the bottom. They're eating legit minnows. That's how they get big. Another one, R&D Adventure said that Rob once pulled a whole patio chair out of the river while fishing off a dock. Score! Did you sit in it right after? I hope not. Nathan said he had a snapping turtle bite his crawler 2 different times. Lucky the hooks just bent out. That is a good thing, because when you hook them and you can't get the hook out, that's where the terrifying things happen. And we got one more. Oh, we got one from Supernoof71, which one of my favorite guys ever. He said, one year while at Laker Palooza, he had a small laker on a stringer off the side of his kayak, jigging away, and caught another laker with a stringer attached to it. Turns out it was my own laker that came undone without me noticing that it was gone. That's actually hilarious.
That's awesome.
Oh, man. So it's just like, where the heck did imagine that he pulls that fish up. He's like, nice. Tries to look for his other stringer with the other fish on it. He's like, wait a second. So last one, Wilson Brewster, he said he was beach fishing in Florida, had just casted a surf rod when a pelican flew into the line, and the bird didn't get caught by the hooks, but it was tangled in the line. I've seen that happen. And I had to run into the water with 3-foot swells, knife in mouth, and grab the line and cut the pelican free. Oh, you're so nice. That actually, as a quick side story, I remember I took one of my buddies who had never fished before, salmon fishing for salmon in the fall. We were casting J13s, and he cast just as a whole V of Canadian geese went over, and he snagged one, and it literally just spooled him. It pulled all his line off. I felt so bad. The goose just kept flying. It didn't care. Hopefully that goose survived. I feel bad. Anyway, lots of weird stuff you can see out when you're fishing in Ontario. And again, this is just a bonus episode, so stay tuned for our regular programming, which is coming back real soon. Actually, when's our next episode, Andrew? Let's do the math right now. Our next episode is going to actually be April 5th, which is actually next weekend if you're listening to this when this one comes out. So this is just a bonus episode, but our next episode, do you remember what it was, Andrew? We recorded it like a month and a half ago. It's the SoFly.
Don't put me on the spot. I'm going to get it. Oh,
yeah. Yeah. So we have a very special episode. We're actually talking to the guys at SoFly. They have a podcast. They have an Instagram. They are kind of podcasting legends. They've been doing it a lot longer than we've been doing it. So we actually interviewed them all about getting into fly fishing, which is something that, maybe you haven't thought of, but it's pretty cool. And even if you're like, no, that's stupid, I'm never going to do that, it's still a really entertaining episode. I don't think I've laughed as much in an episode. Maybe the Dave Mercer one, but this one is pretty fun. So it's a bit of a longer episode too. So for all you people complaining that the episodes aren't long enough, you're going to have a nice long one. So I thought we could do one thing quick, because you know how we always talk about new lures that we bought? Now, this is not including our CanCast stuff, because that will be a lot of stuff. I know Andrew's going to buy a lot of stuff. But I picked these up, and I'm showing Andrew. I'm really excited to try these out. I actually picked up the new Megabass Mag Draft Freestyle 5-inch. Look how good these look.
They look amazing.
Like, dude, these look amazing. Now, to give you a bit of a size comparison, I know like the classic Mag Draft, the 6-inch, they're very popular. It's a bit of a smaller bait. But if you look at that bait side by side, now I'm going to describe this, obviously. It's not only an inch shorter, but it's also a lot smaller in general. So like the 6-inch, I know a lot of people, if you want to get into fishing swim baits, you look at this bait, and if you're not, used to fishing for muskie or big swim baits for bass, you look at this and you're like, wow, that's so big. It's literally not. I've caught 12-inch bass on these easily. And there's a few different ways to rig them, especially if you're using the one with the little treble hook on the top or the treble hook on the bottom. You can catch ridiculously small fish. Sometimes I think the fish, they're not even trying to eat it. They just want to be friends with it, and they somehow get hooked. So I'm like, how are you trying to eat something like literally 4 inches bigger than you? Anyway.
Jesse hooks a number of bass in their side.
Yeah. I try not to. But this is the 5-inch size. This size just came out last year. This particular color is called baby bass. I like baby bass, but I'm excited to try these because one of my favorite baits, and we're going to be fishing for this very soon, is early season bass, which is, pretty much April and the first week of May, when all the bass in zone 20, you can fish for them, catch and release only. And one of my favorite baits has been the Mag Draft, because it seems to catch the slightly bigger ones. It just has a lot of drawing power. It's a big bait, but I feel like sometimes, especially on days when they're not super aggressive, maybe it's slightly too big. So I feel like this 5-inch size is just going to be an absolute weapon year round too for bass. So there's a few different ways you can rig them. You can do a weedless. This is the bigger size I'm showing you, but you can put a belly weighted beast hook on that. You can get a beast hook with the flashy swimmer on it with the little blade for a little extra flash, or you can rig them as a line through with a treble hook on the top. That's my favorite, because then I can reel it kind of over stuff. Like I can reel it over weeds and it won't get hooked. If I have the hook on the bottom, it gets snagged. And then when you hook the fish, the hook comes out and then the bait just slides up and down your line, so they don't have any leverage. So we're excited. We're going to try that out. I think we're going to do a day when Andrew uses small baits and I can only use slightly bigger baits, and we'll see who catches the biggest fish. Because I know he has that weird BFS ego where he thinks that big fish always eat small baits.
Ego.
And I'm just like, I'm going to chuck big baits. And usually it doesn't work for me. So he'll catch like a giant fish on a small dice bait, and I'll be using a huge swim bait and catch like a 12-inch bass. I'm like, yay. Anyway, so until next week, when we have back to our regular programming, we would just like to say thanks for everyone who supports us on Patreon. Again, this show does cost money to make, all the programs and crap that we have to pay for. So if you are a Patreon member, we really do appreciate it, helping us support the show so we don't have to pay out of our own pockets. We really appreciate that. But as well, make sure that you join our Patreon, even as a free member, because we have all of our giveaways on there. So if you want to see any of our giveaways that we're having, if there's any going on, make sure you check out our Patreon. Before we end this episode, we have something that Andrew probably maybe forgot about. The quote of the week. To handle that, we have Andrew.
Because this is a special episode, there's only one thing to say. Don't spend too much money. Or do. I know I will.